Here's 6 science fiction book recommendations for you. A few of these get a bit of play on BookTube, but for the most part I chose things that I don't think are talked about quite as much. Time is the Simplest Thing by Clifford Simak, published in 1957. If you like science fiction that's mesmerizing, has that ethereal drifting in space feel, you're going to get along well with Simak's Time is the Simplest Thing. Thinking of this novella brings me strong Olaf Stapledon Star Maker vibes, Last and First Men vibes. We were really just at the dawn of space exploration when Simak wrote this novel. In the world that he creates, man has basically given up on the idea of trying to visit the stars physically. We really gave up on it a while ago. We just can't handle it. Poor old fragile us. We weren't made for it. There's dangerous radiation and a number of other reasons that we just gotta accept that we gotta stay put. We just don't have the gumption. Now there's an old-timey, old-fashioned word. I did that on purpose. Simak's writing is cozy, it's warm, it's at times lyrical, and it feels dated, but in a good way. Just because we can't go to the stars doesn't mean we can't get to the stars. We might be too fragile to get there physically, but we've advanced in other ways. People have made great leaps in earthbound technology and psychic abilities. There are those who excel at astral projection and can, with the help of said technology, send their minds into the cosmos. These explorers are called Paris. These Paris visit distant worlds and basically see what they've got to offer. Luckily for them, some places, some aliens, have some really nice tech to offer. The real beneficiaries of these discoveries, unfortunately, is the monopolistic corporation Fishhook. Why will it then be in Fishhook's interest to manipulate the puritanical population into believing that these specially abled Paris are perverts, malcontents, and evil magicians? Here's where we get our Samuel Delany Ballad of Beta 2 vibes. Unchecked bigotry is the evil in this, at times, chilling read, and the reader can only hope main character and Pari, Blaine, will not become a victim. Foreigner by Cj Cherryh, published in 1994. This makes an appearance because I want you to discover this great first contact and cool aliens book. I think if you liked Niven and Purnell's classic, The Moten God's Eye, this is going to be right up your alley. For me, one of the most important challenges with alien fiction is that the aliens, they need to be alien. Cherryh hits the nail on the head. Because the Atevi are so unlike us and they react not how I think we'd react, the story works. The story will take place over generations. An unexpected disaster finds the starship Phoenix stranded near an alien planet. Rather than immediately jet down to the planet, human crew and colonists build a space base before making any sudden moves. While it doesn't happen right away, we are going to end up on the planet, and that's when the fun begins. Truth be told, it's not fun for everybody. Like I said, these aliens are alien, and what would a good first contact novel be without misunderstandings and cultural differences? You could easily offend the Atevi by speaking too much or too little. And this is beyond mere linguistics. It's like numerology and linguistics bleshed together. I'm purposely being vague to be careful about spoiling your experience of discovering the Atevi for yourself. This novel is at times haunting, thrilling, and at times politically charged. The novel explores loyalty, betrayal, hidden agendas, robots. There's some slow spots, but they're not wasted. Cherryh uses an economy of words to build the Atevi world and character, and dazzles with mind-bending journeys inside the main character's head. The sequels Invader and Inheritor are equally exciting. Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut, published in 1963. The first-person narrator of this alternate history sci-fi novel is a Bokonanist. He tells us this when we first meet him. We don't really know what that is other than that it's a religion based on lies and centered on the attempting to be utopian island republic, San Lorenzo. The narrator, Jonah, informs us that the journey begins with research for a book that he's writing. The book's called The Day the World Ended. Along this journey, he shares bits and pieces of Bokonanism and some of the important terms and the roles, so that by the end of the book, we'll have a pretty good idea of what it is. The central focus of his research is a Robert Oppenheimer stand-in, Felix Ronecker. Ronecker is a part of a team that developed the atomic bomb. He's probably the main person that was involved in that team. The Day the World Ended will be an account of what important people were doing on the day that the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. While Jonah is an avowed Bokonanist, it's important to him that we understand that he was a Christian when he began working on the book. Jonah's first goal is to speak to the children of Felix Honecker. This begins with a letter to the youngest, Newt, who's referred to with a term that's less presently socially acceptable than what we would call a person of short stature today. Newt's siblings, his older brother and sister, prove to be more difficult to get a hold of. Following this, the adventure begins. Jonah and his investigation will travel to San Lorenzo and meet many intriguing persons along the way. Most riveting for me in the read are the characters. Vonnegut might give a character just a sentence or a paragraph of screen time, and it proves to be just enough. Everybody brings something to the table and sheds light on the story that Jonah's researching. More importantly, they give a lot to the reader. This reminded me, on a smaller scale albeit, of my experiences reading Dahlgren. I turned every page curious to see who we're going to meet next and what compelling thing that they're going to tell us. There is sci-fi in this. The science fiction component is Ice 9, the dangerous, secretive, and scarce final creation of the late Felix Honecker. Each of his 3 children carry with them in thermoses a small sample of the compound. Ice 9 is the result of Honecker attempting to resolve the issue of swampy, muddy conditions that the U.S. armed forces have to deal with on a battlefield. Ice 9, far beyond a solution, is a threat to the world, as just a drop of it can freeze and solidify any body of water that it touches. It doesn't stop there. If it infects a stream, it will also solidify the river that the stream contacts, and then the ocean that the river spills into, and so on. This is enough to make the novel a very strong read, but it's so much more. Vonnegut has the power to pull out truths about humanity that none of us are surprised are there, but it's shocking to us because we never really look directly at them or give them the time of day that we should. He does this through character presentation, dark humor, satire, and sometimes even just bluntly spelling it out. This is true of most of his work, and maybe most obvious in Cat's Cradle. If you're interested to hear more on this one, subscribe to the channel, because I will have a full review of Cat's Cradle up on the channel before the end of the year. Use of Weapons by Ian M. Banks, published in 1990. This can be read without having read the other novels in Banks' phenomenal Culture series of novels. This story is self-contained. The Culture series is as good as space opera and AI science fiction gets. The books in this amazing series are mostly standalone and can be read in almost any order. Use of Weapons is the 3rd book of the series, so why might you start there? I'll get to that in a minute. The Culture series refers to a civilization of 7-ish evolved, federated humanoid species organized thousands of years ago with plots heavily influenced by or relying on the setting of the cosmos. Ever present in the Culture novels is the challenge the advanced AI, manipulative idealists of the Culture face, dealing with other civilizations that don't see things the same way or behave the way that the Culture would like them to. In most cases, I do recommend starting the Culture series with book 1. Consider Phlebas or consider Phlebas. It just makes sense. It's the first book and it's the first vision of the author, and I'm almost always a proponent of starting where you're supposed to. Because Phlebas is maybe not as compelling or page-turning as the first 2 sequels, Player of Games and Use of Weapons, it's also not a terrible idea to start here. Use of Weapons is possibly the best combination of characters assembled in any of the Culture novels, and makes it a perfect starting spot for those who place character work above all else. These characters are rich, textured, sympathetic. You will care about them. Full disclosure, I was just discussing Clifford Simak's City with somebody, and while these books are vastly different, both in their own way have moments on settling on the idea of people's inability to time bind, connect the lessons of the past. This is especially true when it comes to weapons, conflict, war, and fighting. 1 + 1 = 2. If there are weapons, if there's a potential battlefield, conflict and war is a given. It will follow. Moving on, you might also enjoy this if an alternating chapters structure appeals to you. One track is constantly moving forward in time, and the other narrative is comprised of flashbacks with not entirely clear ordering, but don't worry, you're going to figure that out pretty quickly. This is getting wordy, gotta keep moving. So the Culture is mentioned like to, let's say, tinker around and mostly covertly nudge other worlds around. Use of Weapons refers literally to the idea of weapons being used, but it can also be applied to how the meddling of the Culture is a weapon. In this installment, the morality or appropriateness of that is questioned for the reader and by the story's main character. This is a brilliantly written book with a holy cow, mind-blowing ending. A Fire Upon the Deep by Vernor Vinge, published in 1992. I'm including this one because I was thinking about how I missed the Scrode Riders and the Tynes. Those are some of the alien races in this massive space opera. Vinge presents the zones of thought. Zones refer to distinctions among the laws of physics and level of potential advancement and intelligence throughout the universe. The setting for A Fire Upon the Deep spans all of these zones, but mostly the beyond and the slow zone. The apex zone is the transcend. those who inhabit or form the transcend are so advanced and superior, they might as well be gods. They're not often interested or take notice of what occurs beneath the transcend. Even if they were to pay attention or bestow their greatness upon the lower zones would likely not be capable of even understanding. The first prime character that we meet is Ravna, who's further up near the beyond than she maybe should be. She's eventually joined by Femme Nuam, a Frankensteinish, humanish creation, sort of imbued with some of the consciousness of one of the advanced transcendent beings from the far beyond. Together, they will travel down through the zones toward the edge of the slow zone. Their mission centers on an advanced intelligent super blight that was accidentally released in the beyond. The blight spreads through the zones and presents an incredible threat. Also along for the ride on Ravna's mission are some tree-like aliens, comrades, the Scrode Riders. There's a whole other storyline going on in the slow zone on the Tynes world. This world has a medieval feel and it's home to a race of what can best be described as sentient, pack-minded, dog-like beings. These folks have their own crisis, politics, war to deal with. Eventually the storylines will converge and all crises will come to a head. I love the experience of reading this Hugo-winning modern classic, and I ranked it at number 43 on my top 210 science fiction books video. You can see my friend Matt from BOOKPILLED talking more about A Fire Upon the Deep during his cameo on that video, or you can also find a full review of the novel on my video page. Finally is Goliath by Tochi Onyebuchi, published in 2022. This is a post-apocalyptic story. We have the earth is just like, it's got a red haze all around it. The air is unbreathable, so we're sort of way into environmental degradation. Many people have fled the earth and now lived in orbital habitats outside of our atmosphere. And there are some people that stayed behind. So you can imagine it's the people of means, mostly white people, that have gone into space and are living somewhat comfortable lives. And the folks that are sort of left behind on the surface, guess what? They are people of color, non-white people. And they're the ones, this is set mostly in the Northeast. And these are people who are left behind and they're just making the most of their situation. For the most part, they have to live in domed areas. People do go outside of the domes, but if you do that, you're going to have a very short lifespan. Most of the characters that we see are on the surface of the earth, and they're very young. And that's to be expected because your lifespan is going to be really short. So even if you're in the domes, you're going to have a short lifespan because you're still somewhat breathing in this toxic air. I mean, the air is toxic, the water is toxic, even the earth, the ground has toxic elements in it. I first picked this up because I was told to expect that there were going to be some Dahlgren vibes. And if you watch the channel, you know Dahlgren is my all-time favorite novel. You do get that a little bit, and I see where that comes from. You're not going to have the same experience. Whereas in Dahlgren, this absolute strength of the story are the characters and getting to meet them. This is very character driven, and the characters are very interesting, and they do have stories to tell, and they're important stories to tell. It feels like there is a purpose with this book to have us consider, this world looks a lot like a dystopia, and it's not that different than the world that we live in now. So we can question, are we living in some sort of dystopia? Are some of us living in a dystopia and others aren't? And does that have a lot to do with your station in life and maybe race or ethnicity? The answer in the book is yes, it does. We also have a strong commentary on gentrification. We can see in space, we do have a couple, it's a gay couple, a white couple, they come back down to the earth, and guess what? It's almost at a point where you can live on the earth again, things are getting cleaned up. Well, guess what? We're stewards of this world, people of color, who are now being pushed out because we have people from space that apparently are coming back in. And so we can expect that there's going to be some conflict there. The stories that are told through each individual character are really powerful. I think this is a book that gets overlooked. I hope this is a book that, 20, 30 years from now, we're still talking about as one of our really great dystopian books. Onyebuchi also wrote Riot Baby, and along with Goliath, I think that he's a really important voice in science fiction, and I suggest giving either Riot Baby or Goliath a shot. Thank you for watching. I'm Michael Everts, and this is Fit to be Read.